The Roman army marched deep into the forests of Germania. Heavy rain had turned the ground into mud, slowing their advance. Commander Publius Quinctilius Varus was leading 3 legions, around 18,000 to 22,000 men, to crush what he believed was a minor uprising. But this was no battle formation. The army stretched out in a long, vulnerable column. Soldiers, wagons, civilians, and pack animals all mixed together. And Varus wasn't worried, because guiding him through the forest was Arminius, a trusted ally of Rome, a man trained by the Romans themselves. But what Varus didn't know was that Arminius had already united the Germanic tribes, and they were waiting, hidden in the trees, watching every movement. The forest was a trap. As the Roman column moved deeper into the forest, the terrain became increasingly difficult. The path narrowed, wagons began to sink into the mud, and the army's progress slowed. Then suddenly, the silence of the forest was shattered. Spears flew out from the trees and struck the Roman soldiers. Arrows followed, raining down onto the marching column. Germanic warriors rushed down from the wooded hills and attacked different sections of the Roman line. Roman soldiers quickly raised their shields and tried to regroup, but the narrow paths and dense trees made it nearly impossible to form their usual battle formations. The Roman legions were strongest on open ground, where their disciplined ranks could slowly crush the enemy. But here, there was no open battlefield, only trees, mud, and narrow forest tracks. The Germanic warriors attacked quickly, then disappeared back into the forest. Whenever Roman soldiers tried to pursue them, the warriors had already vanished. As the column kept moving, the attacks began again elsewhere. Spears rained down in one area, while in another, Germanic warriors suddenly burst from the undergrowth with axes, killing a few soldiers before disappearing once more. Wagons overturned, pack animals became trapped in the mud, units became separated. The Roman column was slowly being torn apart. As darkness fell, the Romans managed to establish a small defensive camp. The rain continued to fall. The cries of the wounded echoed through the forest. Broken wagons creaked in the mud, and distant Germanic war cries could be heard in the darkness. Roman soldiers stood guard, staring into the forest, but the enemy could not be seen. The forest remained silent. At dawn, the Roman column began marching again, but the ambush resumed almost immediately. Germanic warriors attacked once more from the trees, striking quickly before disappearing again. Roman soldiers tried to advance behind their shields, but the mud and narrow paths prevented them from forming proper lines. Arrows struck their shields. Spears fell among the rear ranks. Sometimes Germanic warriors rushed down from the hillsides. At other times, they appeared suddenly from the dense undergrowth. The Roman column was now completely fragmented. Some units were isolated deep within the forest, while others were trapped among wagons and pack animals. The Germanic warriors used the terrain perfectly, attacking small groups of Romans and cutting them down before vanishing again. As night fell again, the Romans established another small camp. But this time, their situation was far worse. Many soldiers were wounded, and several supply wagons had been lost. Around the dim light of their campfires, exhausted soldiers sat silently, staring into the dark forest. In the distance, the cries of Germanic warriors could be heard. Occasionally, shadows moved between the trees. The Roman soldiers now felt that the enemy was everywhere. On the third day, the Roman column began moving once again. The forest opened slightly, revealing a narrow pass ahead. On one side rose wooded hills. On the other side, stretched marshy wetlands. The Roman army had no choice but to enter this narrow corridor. Here, the final stage of the ambush was waiting. Along the base of the hills, Germanic warriors had built a defensive barrier days before the Romans arrived. A long earthen wall, reinforced with soil and tree trunks, stretched along the slope. From behind this barrier, the Germanic warriors could attack while remaining protected. When the Roman column fully entered the pass, the final assault began. Hundreds of Germanic warriors emerged from the forest at once. From behind the earthen wall, spears and arrows rained down onto the trapped Roman soldiers. The Romans were now completely trapped. They could neither spread out nor form a proper battle line. Germanic warriors rushed down the slopes and slammed into the Roman column. Others leapt over the earthen wall and charged directly into the Roman ranks. In the narrow pass, the battle quickly turned into a massacre. Roman soldiers slipped in the mud. Wagons overturned. Units collapsed into chaos. Germanic warriors struck with axes and spears, cutting down Roman soldiers one by one. Small groups of Romans attempted to form shield walls, but they were quickly surrounded and destroyed. The narrow passage soon filled with the bodies of Roman soldiers. Seeing that his army was doomed, Publius Quinctilius Varus chose not to be captured. Instead, he fell upon his own sword. After 3 days of ambush and relentless attacks, the Roman army had been almost completely destroyed. 3 Roman legions, 17, 18, and 19, were wiped out in the forests of Germania. Approximately 15,000 to 20,000 Roman soldiers were killed in the disaster. The Germanic tribes, benefiting from the ambush and their knowledge of the terrain, likely suffered far fewer losses, perhaps around 1,000 to 3,000 warriors. For Rome, the defeat was devastating. When the Roman Emperor Augustus received the news, ancient sources say he wandered through his palace in despair, crying out again and again, "Varus, give me back my legions." After the catastrophe in the Teutoburg forest, Rome abandoned its plans to conquer Germania. The empire's northern frontier would remain along the Rhine River, and the dark forests of Germania became the grave of one of the greatest military disasters in Roman history.